Yeah, we're live. I had to switch my light off there. The lighting is better. It's more favorable. It's more flattering. And we are live. Get your projects done. This is your morning motivation. It technically is still morning, 10:20 here in the AM in not today, kind of sunny California, which is nice. I can see blue sky. I can see sunshine, and it's not raining. Cats and dogs. You might be able to hear the dogs in the background. The little ones might be whining, but that's good. But today we're going to talk about, first of all, get your projects done, project motivation. And secondly, we're going to talk about adding 706 heads to a 6-liter. It's a very common thing. You know, if you go get a 4.8 or 5.3, it's already going to have that head on there. So it's already going to work fairly well. So on that, if you're looking to make more torque because you have a towing application or whatever, you want to make them more low speed power. We talked about that the other night. In fact, probably was last night. We were talking about where you want to make your torque, not just peak torque, but where do you want to make it? So where is it important? Because ultimately, when we're talking about these things, you're going to have to choose that. Like what thing is going to be more important? Because you're going to sacrifice something somewhere else. So you're going to have to give something up to gain something. So it's a give and take relationship, which is good, which is all good relationships are. So the question is, because again, like always, sometimes we're not asking the right question. So the question is, the first question is, will a 706 head improve torque production on a 6-liter? Yes, it will. So as a basic example, it will. But here's what happens when we tell people that. Well, I get more torque if I put a 706 head on my 6-liter. Okay. First of all, we got to specify 6-liter. We got to specify which one. Is it an LQ4, an LQ9, flat top cathedral port kinds of things, and any variation thereof in other countries and stuff. Or is it a LY6, like any sort of L version, 76, 78, 79, whatever the other numbers are, for a 6-liter that would have come like with a VVT, could even be aluminum one, whatever, if they had aluminum 6-liter versions. So the question is, how does it compare to a 317 head on an LQ4 and an LQ9, or how does it compare to a rec port head on some sort of rec port headed 6-liter? I think fewer people would be apt to put a 706 head on a 6.2 because it's bigger. It has good torque. You could run another cathedral port head on it, maybe a 799. And I have tests up on the channel right now, so please go check it out if you're curious. What happens when you run a 799 head versus a rec port head? And if you are looking for more torque, it's actually not a bad deal, because just like with the 706 on a 799 versus a rec port head, you're going to gain compression because you have a difference in chamber size. You have anywhere from 69 to 71 cc's on the rec port head and down near 62-ish kind of on the 62 to 63 for the 799 head. Even smaller on the 706 head, but in addition to having a smaller chamber, we also have smaller valves, a smaller port, all of the good things. So the question becomes, which one do you want to compare that to? So we'll jump into it really quickly because I think fewer people would do this. Somebody putting a 706 head in place of a rec port head, if you're going to do that, you're definitely going to lose power. You're going to gain torque. When I did a back-to-back test of a 706 head versus a rec port head, you gain torque all the way up to 4,300. So from 0 RPM up to 4,300, the smaller head is going to be better. Smaller chamber, smaller port, smaller valve, more torque production in that range. However, here's the caveat. That test was done on a 6-liter, but it had a pretty good sized camshaft. It had a 459 cam, so it had a 231 cam in it. So the results may be a little bit different. I tend not to think that they're going to be dramatically different, but it may shift the crossover point a little bit. Either way, figure on when you compare a 706 head to a rec port head, you're going to get more torque down low, but you are going to sacrifice torque up top. Now, you can nullify some of that with a smaller cam. That's what I would suspect. The rec port should come into its own with its airflow that it can supply. It would be much better off like having a better intake manifold. The wilder the combination, the more it's going to be able to take advantage of that head flow. So if you're looking for torque, the 706 heads is going to help that, but you will sacrifice a little bit on the top. If you compare a 706 head to a 317 head, which would have come on the cathedral port versions of these 6-liters on either an LQ4 or an LQ9, if you compare that, when I did the comparison of the 706 versus a 317, the 706 head was better everywhere, from all the way at the top to all the way at the bottom. So and this was only on a 5.3. And I know guys are thinking, yeah, but what about on a 6.0 that could take advantage of it? If you're building a motor with lots of camshaft in it, where you would want to use lots of airflow, that's the wrong direction for a torque motor anyways. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about where would you want torque. A 317 head would not ever be the head that I would choose for this combination. I would be more apt to pick a 243 head for a 6-liter LQ9 or LQ4, or certainly the 706 head. The 706 head is definitely going to make more torque down low than either one of those. And I've tested the 706 versus the 799, 243, and also versus the 317, and the 706 head is better down low anyways. So again, we're focusing on the sub 4,500 RPM range, because beyond that, when I tested the 706 versus the 799, as we went up in engine speed, and that was on a cammed motor, the extra airflow of the 799 243 head, the combination could take advantage of that, and now was better at the top. It still lost power down low. So if we're talking about down low, let's focus on the 706 head, because that's the one that's going to be best, especially if you were to maybe, and I don't know where this crossover would be in terms of some sort of trade-off. There might not be any, but if I'm putting this on a 6-liter, I'm definitely going to unshroud the valve like I have the video up. I'm going to unshroud the valve. I'm going to open the chamber up out to that 4-inch bore size, because on a 706 head, the chamber is not only smaller in volume, it's smaller in what I would call the inside diameter measurement. So if you take what's my micrometer, my measuring device, take your measuring device, measure across the chamber, a 799 head is bigger than the 706 head. Not just it's bigger in volume, obviously, but also bigger on the outside. So if we open up the chamber out to that 4-inch bore side, both on the intake and the exhaust on the 706 head, it's going to only help power. I think it's only going to help airflow, and it helped airflow from top to bottom. So that leads me to believe that we're going to gain power everywhere. So I would definitely open that up. And then if you wanted to put a 2-inch valve in it or do a little bit of porting, you could do that. And then you may pick up more power. But again, as you do those things, you're starting to look more toward power on the top and not on the bottom. So I definitely would unshroud the chamber. And I think that is only going to help you on the 706 head. I would put that on. I wouldn't be opposed to polishing the chamber, because that's going to jump into the next thing that we talk about, the next question that we'd have to have. So for low speed torque below 4,500 RPM and lower, a 706 head is going to be the way to go. It's going to be better than all of those other heads. You can, yes, use 799, 243 guys. You can mill the 799 and do good things also. So if you have that, that's what I would do. I wouldn't put a different head on it. I'm talking about a guy that has an LQ4 and LQ9 and has a 317 head on it. I wouldn't mill that. I would replace it. A 706 head costs next to nothing. There's probably a bunch of them just laying around out there in the wrecking yard, or guys willing to give them away because they're terrible heads. And yet, so I would put those on. But then here's the next question. You're definitely going to gain low speed power. You're going to definitely gain low speed torque. So in that range where you'd be most likely to use it for towing or whatever you're doing, you're definitely going to pick it up. When we test it on the engine dyno, we test it with an optimized tune. So we have the right amount of timing. We're running on 91 octane when we're doing all this, but the motor's fairly cold. We have an open inlet system. We have usually long tube headers, although I have tested also this on stock exhaust manifolds, and the gains are the gains. You just start at a lower point and end at a lower point. Same thing with camshafts. Well, you know, the headers are going to change things completely. No, it doesn't change things completely. What it did is the headers gain power. They gain power on the stock cam and they gain power on the aftermarket cam. It's just that we start and end at a higher point with the cam than we did, or with the headers, than we do with the stock exhaust manifolds. So same thing's going to happen. So if we gain torque from the 706 head. But as I said, when we tested it with a cold, we tested it with optimized timing. The air fuel is going to be optimized anyway. And quite honestly, it's not that receptive to differences in air fuel. So you have a big window to tune with in the air fuel. What you're going to do, though, if you're testing this for fuel mileage or whatever and part throttle cruise, you're going to want to optimize that part of it. But at wide open throttle, where you're trying to make power, you're trying to make torque, you're towing whatever your 3/4 throttle or whatever, you're going to make more low speed power with a 706 head. Here's the next question. 706 head compared to a 317 head is definitely going to change the static compression a full point or more, because you're going to go from 72 to 62 or less. And so a 10 cc change in the combustion chamber is going to change it a full point. We can go to Wallace Racing right now if you like, and we can show exactly how much it is, but you guys should all be doing that anyway. Go in, plug in the numbers, put 72, put 62 or 61 or 60 or whatever your number is, and then you can see what the change is in static compression. You can also do it with head gasket thickness. But here's the question. If you do change that, if you put a 706 head on and replace your 317 head, put a 706 head, you gain more torque. You're actually going to gain power everywhere in that case, and run some stock cam or some sort of small cam, a torque cam, or even a Truck Norris cam or whatever, because up to 4,500, it's going to pick up a little bit of power, not a ton, but it's going to pick up some. So you're doing that. The next question becomes, what about temperature and detonation? So the 706 head is going to have a higher combustion chamber or a higher static compression because it has a smaller combustion chamber. What happens now with the detonation threshold? That's the other question. Because let's say we gain 20 foot-pounds of torque, but we had to retard the timing 3 degrees and we knocked 15 out of it. Now we still have a net gain of 5 foot-pounds, which is good. And if your knock sensors are working and you have timing in there to take advantage of that, and you let the knock sensors do their thing and take it away, when you have it, you can have it. And when it wants to have knock counts and or retard it, then it'll take it away. So you have the potential to have it, but do you really have it? And that becomes the question. I unfortunately cannot answer that on the engine dyno. That can only be answered with actual testing in a vehicle, out under loads in a real world condition to see what happens. We know on the dyno that a 706 head, it definitely makes more power than a 317 head. It makes more torque down low. In fact, it makes more torque down low than any of the other factory heads. It's better. It's better down low. Again, smaller chamber, smaller valve size, smaller port cross section, a good coefficient of discharge. It's got good low and mid lift number. It has all the things that you would expect a cylinder head to make that makes more low speed power. It has all of the things off your checklist. But that's not the only thing. Even though it does that in an idealized setting, does it do that in the real world? So that's going to be our poll. Will 706 heads add torque over the 317 heads in real world driving? We know it does it on the dyno, but does it actually do that while you're out there behind the wheel? Somebody let me know, especially let me know if you've had this, if you've done this swap, because it's fairly common. Also, if you're a tuner and you've tuned this kind of swap, let me know, like if you run it on the chassis dyno or whatever, are you seeing more knock counts with the smaller chamber and stuff? Because the other thing that happens, and we haven't discussed this yet, I'll go ahead and put the poll up. But the other thing that happens that we haven't discussed that yet is the 317 head is not just bigger, but the chamber shape is not as good. Like a 317 head milled doesn't make the same power that a 799 head does. Not because you can't get the chamber sizes equal, because you can, but even when you do that, even when the compression ratio is the same, the 317 head still doesn't make the same power, despite the fact that it flows nearly identical to a 799 and a 243 head. The chamber shape is different. If you look at the chambers and examine them, one is definitely different than the other. So we know from a power standpoint, one is not as efficient. But do we know which one of those is more susceptible to detonation? I can't tell you that. And that would be an interesting test, to have all of the knock counts on both the heads and do that test and do it so that it's 100% repeatable and stuff. It's very difficult, except in the confines of an engine dyno, like at an OEM level, maybe would be a good place. Because I don't even know if the chassis dyno is honestly going to show that. I don't have enough confidence in the repeatability for something like that of the chassis dyno. I have to run a whole bunch of runs in stock configuration before I did the head swap to ensure that, did trans temperature do something? Did the change in temperature of the day do something? Did the number of runs that you did the oil temperature, all that stuff? You'd have to, there's a lot of monitoring that would have to go on for you to be able to tell that. But it would be interesting to know that. Like, I'd like to know what the detonation resistance difference is just between the two chamber designs, irrespective of the change in compression. But on the 706 head, we are throwing in a change in static compression. We're also throwing in a change in chamber design. So again, like the 706 versus a 317 head, even though it has a bunch more, it has more compression, does it also have a better chamber design that eliminates this detonation threshold or counteracts the detonation threshold, despite the fact that we have added static compression? If we put a little bit of camshaft in it and change the dynamic compression, do we get rid of that? I mean, there's really, really lots of cool questions here. So, but let me know what you guys think. I'm kind of curious. So we'll kind of see how the poll is doing here. So we got 31 votes in so far. 81% are saying that they think that it actually does that in the real world. It's an interesting little conundrum. So we're going to scroll back, see who's here. Sergeant, Honda Tech, Squirrel's here, Kroll, Marty, Andrew. Let's see. I got 706 heads on my 6-liter and a Demuse blower, E85 only. Okay, that's good. See, and I was going to talk about that. I'm glad you brought that up, Andrew. I was going to talk about that on the 317. I throw a lot of shade on the 317 as the head that I was replaced on stuff. But there are instances where I wouldn't do that. If I have a 6-liter and it has 317s and I'm going to put a turbo on it, I just put the turbo on there. Especially if I was going to try to run the turbo on pump gas. If I was going to run on 91 or even 93, I just keep the 317 heads on there. Again, I'd like to know the detonation threshold thing to see if that's to see what that is. But quite honestly, if I took the 317 heads off, which I probably would so that you could change ring gap, and I did that, I certainly would go in and polish the chamber. It would just make me feel better. I would probably clean the piston tops too. I know that changes the compression. You shouldn't do that because that's a speed secret trick. But I would do that just to, and I might polish the piston tops. I might do that just to make myself feel better. And as a hedge against detonation, it would be cool. And I hope to do that this year, is do the test with Brian and James out there and do softening the chambers and see what the change in detonation resistance is of softening the chambers. We kind of have to do that in a vehicle though. So we have not counts to register and figure out exactly what it was. Morning to everybody. 862s on a 408 build. See, I don't know if I would do that given it's easy to get compression with the displacement and it's easy to get lots of torque with the thing. So I don't think on a 408, I'll be looking at that head because I wouldn't be looking at 2,000 to 4,000 RPM on that motor. I'd be looking, you have enough torque down there anyway. So I'd probably be looking at something with more cam and stuff in it. 706 heads on my LQ4, sloppy stage 2 cam, 3800 stall. So that's not a torque application really. Tough crowd. There's only one like. Oh, there's more than that now. Go into a rectangular port heads and an LSX RT intake manifold. You don't need that. I wouldn't recommend that. If you haven't bought the LSX RT intake or an LSX R intake manifold rec port heads, I wouldn't do it. I just put a factory LS3 intake manifold on there. If you want to put a truck manifold on there, which makes the same power as an LS3, you can do an LY6 intake manifold. But the LSX RT isn't going to gain you anything on a rec port headed application over the factory LS3 intake manifold. Recals in the house. I'm running 243s on an LQ9 with an 8892. Runs pretty good. Would like to add water meth just to keep it out. And so you're running that on pump 93. That's a see on that, I probably would run the 317 head. Marty, if you're looking for torque, add boost. Yeah, boost does do that too, but at 2,000 RPM, I wouldn't be wanting boost there probably. I currently have 862s on my LQ4. I find myself kind of dissatisfied. I went from a 214, 220 and 317s to 862 and a 214, 222, 108. That should have more power everywhere. I'm going to swap to a set of 799s and a 78720 cam. Man, you're doing a lot of. I'm thinking that that's in the tune and not the parts that you're talking about. An 862 head versus a 317 head should be up a lot. And your 108 cam should not idle quite as well, but it should be up, especially in that range. I have 241s on my 4.8. Were they just laying around? Is that why you chose that? Not that they're a bad head. Fireman 164 says, watch out for the TECH-706 heads. I've run them and I haven't had any problems with them. And I've even run ones that have cracks in them and not had any problems. I have several flat top 5.3s. Are the aluminum ones that I want to put ported 706 heads on? A ported 706 head works really well. You can make a lot of power because you can get them to flow over 300 CFM. So that's enough to support more power than certainly more than an NA 5.3 is going to make. So 799 head for a higher revving. Yeah, Bert, you can look at the video that I did on the 706 head versus a 799 head on a 6-liter with a cam in it. And the 799 head made more power at the top, if that's what you're looking for. And that had a cam in it. But it lost power down low still. Running AFR 245s on a 427. That should be a good choice for that. Smoke Country Life. You got a scrambler swap? $120 5.3 that I picked up as 706 headlights, as they should. I'm going to go to live chat now, see if I can catch them up. Polls at 85% saying yes. Let's see. What if you mill the 317s? We talked about that. You can mill the 317s. They're not going to make anywhere near what a they won't make what a 799 does, and they won't make what a 706 does, even when they're milled. But it doesn't matter. If you have 317s and you're running a turbo on it, they'll work. $243 is the best all-around head for the 6-liter or smaller. That's not true. Does the battery have a slash through it right where they crack? I've heard people swapping LS heads on non-LS motors, mostly Fords, because the bore spacing is similar. The LS next block, yeah, that's not a small block. It just has a small block bottom end, but it's designed to receive LS heads though. How much would the changing compression affect the sound? If you have more static compression, it sounds better, especially if you've already got a cam in it. I get confused over all the different heads. The 243 is the factory performance cathedral port head. The 317 was a lower compression, same ports as that 243 head, but lower compression, bigger chamber for use in the truck because they do lots of heavy towing, and it's not really, they know that they're going to be beat up on, and so they want to minimize detonation in those. The 706 head is used for the smaller bore 5.3 and 4.8s, and 862, same head. It's just like a 243 and a 799. And then the 241 head was the OG, and there are others too, but was the OG original 5.7 LS1 head. Richard, I've never seen you wear a warm hoodie before. Yeah, this one is lined, so it's pretty good. But right now it's actually fairly nice outside. But we did have frost on all the cars this morning. How many people consider head gasket thickness when building an engine? Yes, you should, because you don't want the piston to hit the head. And also it affects compression, which is one of the things that they asked you on the Wallace Racing. So you put in all of your data. Richard, although our ported 706 heads on 6-liter are just regular 6-liter, I logged in late. We're talking about people just putting regular 706 heads on a 6-liter to gain more torque. I like to stay between 40 and 45. The usual choices for LS motors are 41 and 53. Obviously, you could get them in any probably thickness that you want. You can get them in thicker ones if you want to do boosts, I guess. We used to do that back in the day with really thick head gaskets. And if you get really thick ones like Kazi did that were 300 thousandths so that you can do well in engine masters, basically. I have ported 862 heads with bigger intake valves on my LQ9. Did you unshroud the chambers on those, Brad, when you put bigger valves on? That's not uncommon. Most of the, like we run a lot of the total engine airflow, and other people, we run some K-Tech stuff too. But when they do their head porting deal, they usually step up in valve size. Richard, do I need a small base circle cam on a 4-inch stroke 6-liter? No. But you should mock it up just to make sure that the rods are not hitting other things, but they probably shouldn't hit the camshaft though. Don't beat me up. I've been running 87 pump gas on my LQ4, but I only recommend 6 or 7 pounds with 50. So you're running 87 pump gas with boost on it, but an LQ4 has a 317 head, so it's already fairly low compression. The best head for your 4.8 is the one that you have on your 4.8. And also you got to give me your definition of best also. Can you show us your 240Z? I thought that if you go back on some of the live feeds, I put up a photo of me pulling the engine out of it. The only time I use Claire check piston to valve clearances when we're running bigger cams. Cerakote the dome and the chamber on the head. Peen the skirts, you're going to knurl them. I have 862 heads on my LM7. That's what they would have come with, or 706. Are the 799s and are the same 243s any better than that? No, they're not. The heads that you have on there now, you can, if you tell me what you're trying to do with it, then we can tell you how to get there. And if you're putting a turbo on it and you want to make 1,000 horsepower more, the heads that you have on it will easily do that. And if you want to make power, you just put a cam in it. You can easily do that. You will get the smallest gain, if you get any gain, from putting 799 heads on. First thing you should do is put a camshaft in it. Mason, I'm leaning towards 799s on the LQ4. They're not going to gain flow over a 317 head. Those things flow almost identical. The only thing that's going to change is the combustion chamber. Blue collar, that was my hope. My old setup made 327, 369 on 87. The current 862s and 108 LSA cam did 336. Is that blue collar? Were you talking about the cams on your NA motor? Is that what we were talking about before? Is a 5.3 better for a C5 than an LS1 for a boosted application? Are you, what blower are you going to put in there? And starting out with an LS1, and it depends on how far you want to take that. Yeah, a 5.3 ultimately could make more power because the block is going to be stronger than an LS1 block is. But if you're not going there, then just run the one that you have. Because the nice thing about the LS1 is it's already bigger, and so it's going to start out making more power. Brad Truck Norris is 220X. Cam seems aggressive, but my bet is 229. Didn't see your comment, Honda. Sorry to repeat. Somebody used the word thoughts. Brad, they were deshrouded. That's a good idea. It definitely improves flow. I would not take 243s off and put 706 heads on a 6-liter LS2. I wouldn't either. But I wouldn't take 706 heads off a 5.3 and put 243s on it either. Is the bore spacing bigger on a 6-liter than a 5.3? No, they're all the same. Even a 7-liter, the bore spacing is the same. The bore is a different size, but the bore spacing is not. A 6-liter is a 4-inch bore, and a 5.3 is a 3.780. Marty, so you got an LQ4, Gen 4 internals, 317 heads. Does it have Gen 4 LQ4 internals, or does it have a flat top piston? What can I expect going from 317 heads to 799 heads on a 6-liter? You're going to pick up, I don't know, about 3% of power. Yeah, blue collar, let me know if you go back to the dyno. Let me know what happens. '87 is a no-go with boost. Yeah, I think that the different combinations are just, some of them just you can get away with. One of the guys that was here the other night, and I've seen him here a few times way back, so I remember him making comments, but he was asking about putting the piston way down in the hole, and I apologize, I can't remember your name or your handle. But he was asking about putting the piston like 120 thousandths down the hole, which we were talking about Dodge stuff at the time, to have it way down there. I was worried about detonation from having it down that far, but he was wondering if you just took a lot of compression out and you made it 7 or 8 to 1, and then could you then get away with, and we've asked this question before, if we really lower the compression, can we get away with running, very low octane fuel and still ultimately make more power because we've squashed all possibility of detonation, or the relationship between power and detonation, we put it in a more favorable spot? And I don't know the answer to that. I would like to see what that is. I'd like to see what happens, but we need detonation sensing capability to make that happen. We'll take a quick look at our poll again. Will the 706 heads add torque over the 317 heads? 86% are saying yes. Will the new exhaust cam make it louder? I've already making it down, Matt. you don't have to worry about that. Do you have an open exhaust on your Turbo Sentra? If you've got a muffler or anything on it, you don't have to worry about that. And your cams are not wild enough for that really to be a problem. And it's much more of a problem on non-turbo applications when you get a cami sound on an NA one with open exhaust. It's much worse than a turbo is. Richard, got a free upgrade on my stroker kit to forge pistons and forge H-beam rods. That's a free forge stuff is always good. I have 706 heads on a 6-liter with LS3 head gaskets with a compression ratio of 11.5 to 1. Haven't drove or got it tuned. What do you think? Do you have like a flat top or a dome piston on this thing to make it 11.5 to 1? .317s are a good head for a 6-liter. Just has a big combustion chamber, so get some new pistons or a head swap. And if honestly, if I was running boost and I had an LQ4, I'd just run it with boost because we know that it will work on pump gas, and we know that you can make, if you have 1,000 horsepower turbo, having 317 heads is not going to stop you from making 1,000 horsepower. It'll still do the same thing. It might take a little bit more boost than it does on a 706 head, and it might not be quite as responsive as a 706 head, but it's still going to do it. I have LS3 FR260s on my 408, -3 flat tops. Okay, so a flat top with a valve relief. A little worried about piston to valve clearance. If you have valve reliefs in the pistons, then you shouldn't worry about valve reliefs. I mean, shouldn't worry about because it's not just a flat top, right? It has valve reliefs. If you have valve reliefs in it, usually the valve reliefs are deep enough for any kind of a camshaft that you can put in there. Let's see. Yeah, definitely check when you mock it up. That's why you should always mock it up before you put it together for a final time. Scrolling back. Let's see. Mirabella Media, don't keep asking the same question, otherwise you get kicked out. Of an L96 full headers and exhaust, 224, 230. It's not good under 4,000, considering going to 799s. What does an L96 have on it? Does it have? Is that a rec port headed combination with the Trailblazer SS intake manifold? Are you sure the tune is right? That shouldn't be terrible. That's not a big cam. Won't really low compression make the engine lazy? It will. It'll make it very soft. But the thing is, can you get to making more power by adding more boost and timing with that combination than you could if you had higher compression? And I don't know what the answer to that is, because we're playing with power versus a detonation level. Can we get to more power, without getting into detonation? $224 at 50. That's not a big cam. I mean, it's going to make power. But it's definitely a streetable cam. If you want low speed power below 4,000, then you would put a smaller cam in it. But that cam's going to make good power. Molly forged pistons. I love this channel because I'm learning a lot of information before I start beefing up my 5.3 Yukon. Happy to help. Yeah, the tune is important. So how's our poll is at 87% saying yes, they think it's going to make more torque. What's the max lift on the 706 head? That head will take as much lift as anything else, any of the other stock heads. You just have to put the right spring and probably valve guide in it too. Not guide, the right seal. What's the best head for a 408 twin turbo setup? What's your definition of best? You got to tell me what you're trying to do. There's no best head for that, because I don't know what you're trying to do. Are you trying to make you have a 408 twin turbo setup that you're daily driving and are never going to go into boost, and you just want it to idle nice? That best camshaft would be different than one that you're trying to max out two S475s on a 408 and trying to make 2,000 horsepower. So where are you? Let's say that those are the two extremes. There's extremes beyond that, obviously, but where is it and what are you trying to do? And then we can kind of give you an idea. But more than likely, it's going to be the head that you have. If it's less than 1,000 horsepower, it would be the head that you have. Justin, what would the compression ratio be in a stock LQ4 with 60 cc chambers? You need to go to Wallace Racing and plug in all your information. That way, I'm teaching you to fish rather than giving you a fish. That way you can, if you ever have a question about anything, you can go there and figure it out. I'm glad I have a 4.8 so that any head I have is the best head. They all are. They all are on any LS. What are flow numbers of a small block Chevy Vortec head? Probably around 210. But go to Stan Weiss. He's got Vortec flow numbers. No, best is allowed. It's just thoughts, not so much. Best is fine, but you just need to describe what we need to get into your definition of best. Just got a TSP Chupacabra. I'm going to be testing that fairly soon here. Richard, take a look at the videos I have up on 408 stuff. I don't know the highest average low end torque. Take a look at what do we ran that on, a 6 liter? And any ported cathedral port head is going to work really good for that. Can you recommend some good flat tops and just running a street stage U turbo cam and ported 862 heads? We could just put LQ4 flat tops in that with that combination, just stock ones with ring gap in them, or the Wiseco JE, the Summit Pro LS stuff is good. You can get forged pistons from those guys. Oh, Richard, yours was mainly to show how to ask a best question. That would be good. Define it, and that was a good job. It was well defined. Camaro LT1. I don't know. Did you use the formula? Ever built a 352 400 block and a 327 crank? No. Westech has, it's not a 400 block. It is, but it's a Dart version. They have an SHP motor that is a 4125 bore, but it has a 350 crank in it. So it has the 348 stroke in it and not the 327. But you could do that. You could de-stroke it even more. It's just going to make less power. I just picked up a 6 liter Gen 3 swapped Porsche Boxster. Wow. Wow. You just kind of fell off the market here, didn't you? So I'm going to keep an eye on you. Got my eye on you. So that's interesting. Let's see. Sam, if everything else is stock, I would at least put a cam in it. Even if you're going to put a Trailblazer SS intake manifold on it, I would, on your Porsche Boxster, I would put a cam in it, even if you're going to use that Trailblazer intake manifold later, if it will fit. I don't know, will it fit under that bonnet? Harry, Gen 2, LT1, F1A. What should I expect going from factory ported aluminum heads to AFR 195s? I don't know. It depends on how good the factory ported heads were done. I don't know how the head you have compares to an AFR 195 head. I'd be curious to see. I've seen some really well done factory ported heads, which would lead me to believe that the gain's not going to be that great. I've seen some that have been just completely ruined, which means the gains would be pretty good. James, is it an LS2 and an LS9? The piston, the casting number is the same? They're exactly the same piston? Seven degrees of overlap, bleeding off compression. So how do we, if we're bleeding off compression, how are we picking up torque when that happens? I think people have the wrong idea about overlap on a cam. They think the same thing about overlap on turbo cams. Overlap doesn't work on turbo cams. Yes, it does. It works NA and it works on turbos and blowers and nitrous. Overlap is not bad. In my Yukon, I have an aluminum block. I'm about to purchase an engine from Powertrain to build for 600 to 750 horsepower. Is it an aluminum 5.3? If it's an aluminum 5.3, you just need to keep that one. Chris, you need to tell me what what do you want the cam to do? Ellis, Richard, on a big block Ford 528 build, we did testing in the hole depth, anything past. So you actually put different pistons in it and checked it? Because that's a fairly involved test. But testing in the hole, anything past 60 thousandths down, the detonation got worse. Zero deck was really bad. 60 was more manageable. And 100 took 6 degrees less timing. So zero deck was the best. And then as you went down in the hole, it got worse. Is that what you're saying? And did you and how, I'm curious how you did this test. Did you do it with different rod lengths, or you do it with different compressionite pistons, or what did you do? I'm under the impression that a cam with negative overlap helps build compression, dynamic compression, and one with positive compression does the opposite. But you're attributing dynamic compression to power. A stock camshaft has negative 30 degrees of overlap. You put a camshaft in it that has a positive 3 or 4 degrees of overlap, and it makes more peak torque and more peak power and more power through 90% of the range. So now what's the discussion on overlap? So that's what I'm talking about. It's like our throttle body tests. When we have a big throttle body, we know it flows more than the little throttle body. But if the little throttle body will already support the airflow, it doesn't matter that we put a bigger one on. And it's the same kind of thing. Overlap is not bad. And I'm going to talk about that in my cam test, because I tested camshafts on turbo applications from negative 37 degrees overlap to positive 25 degrees of overlap. And guess what? They all work with turbos. I got a 2650 with a 2650 roots blower on a 416 and hand ported heads on E85. That should be a good combination. That blower can support a lot of power. So if you have heads or ported heads, that will help you make the power at a lower boost level. Hopefully you have a good camshaft in that. I have a 6-liter 706 sloppy stage 2. That should work good. Not great for torque, and certainly not with a Holley Sniper intake for torque, but I don't know which direction you're going here. Oh, you're going to change to a fast intake over the Sniper. You're going to get a big change in power from that. Falcon, I don't know what kind of boost you're running on it. That's going to depend on how much power, but that blower can support 4-digit power levels. $50 to $75 should be very manageable overlap for street. 60 degrees overflap. You got to keep a close eye on the overflap. Looking into buying an S10 4x4 with a 4.3. The 4.3 is going to be hard because there's not a lot of stuff for it. So tune, headers, exhaust are all things that you can do to it. A camshaft, I'm thinking you're probably, if you put some sort of small RV style camshaft in it, 204, 206 kind of at 50, you might pick up power everywhere with that. So an LSX block is 100 pounds heavier than the factory aluminum block. That's a lot. Let's take a look at our poll. 87% seems to be fairly stabilized. Will the 706 heads add torque over the 317 heads? And real world driving, 86% saying yes. We'll get rid of our poll there. Richard, I know most want power, but I want to focus on economy. Then for part throttle cruise, a 706 head would be what I would choose for that. I'm running sloppy stage 2 plus valve springs on my 01 Silverado, 5.3, stock everything else, super doggy down low. It will be. That's not a good low speed camshaft. It's 228 at 50. You need a smaller camshaft if you want low speed power. If I'm trying to run 1,000,000 horsepower, then I'm not concerned about block weight. I'll just I would take the strength and then worry about weight somewhere else. Chris, Richard, I've been a big fan. Thanks for all you do. I've been a cylinder head machinist for 16 years, so I'm sure you know your stuff. That's very cool. Trying to scroll down. Media, I have 11.5 to 1 compression. I have a 30 over, a stock crank stroke, 61cc chamber, 51cc or 51 thousandths thick head gasket. You have 20 deck clearance, -4 dome. Your piston is 20 down in the hole, or saying it's 20 out of the hole. LQ9, ring gap, 317, ported heads, 226 cam, twin GT35s. At 10 pounds, so let's say that's 226, 800. Probably a little shy of that, but not too far. Richard, when are you heading back to West Tech? As soon as the dyno's not ready yet, unfortunately. So I think that they're doing engine masters this week. So after that. Oh no, wait, what day is it today? 17th. Yeah, so I'll be testing next week. Testing next week, yo. So, good gasket studs are worth the money for boost. Yeah, I agree. Richard, you build engines for people? No, thank you. JC, I want to go to a bigger cam than the sloppy stage 2. Well, take a look. I have sloppy stage 2 versus that 459 and 469 camshaft up, and you can see what they both do. I tested them on a 6-liter. I don't know what you're putting that on, but the data's up there so you can see what the difference is. Have you tested any comp street roller cams on are you talking about on a Ford or Chevy or LS? If it's on an LS, I haven't run solid roller stuff on an LS. I have run it once, but but I don't normally do it, very rarely. JC, is that going to be an NA motor? All I know is a deck clearance of 20 thousandths. I don't know what that is. I don't know if it's 20 out of the hole, which would be too much in my opinion. If it's 20 down in the hole, I would think that would be too much. Also, it's more than I would want to see. I'd want to see it closer to 0. It's not unusual for factory LS stuff to be 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 out, but 20 seems like a lot. That seems like they missed it. Either their math and figuring out the distance going up or it coming back down, not going up and down like stroke, but the distance away from the deck height. Uh, 72C chambers went from 11.2 to 10.2. This must have been the poor chamber design. I don't know what you mean by that. Have you ever thought about doing tunes? Nope, I'm not a tuner. What's the first thing you would upgrade for a 97 318 Mopar? I'd make it a 360 would be the best thing. But a camshaft is cam and springs would be the first thing. Richard, should you run a heavier spring under boost? I like to, but maybe that's not necessary. And how much boost are you talking about? Are you running a stock cam and are you running LS3, an LS3 cam and stock springs? What are you running there? Because the stability of the cam is going to have a lot to do with that also. Richard, I bought a charger with a Pensar 3.6 liter. I know not much can be done with these. We can add boost to them. A sloppy stage 2 is a good upgrade compared to a stage 3 low lift truck cam. I don't think you're going to gain a whole bunch there. It'd be a little better, but I wouldn't do the cam change for that. What's the engine that surprised you most on the initial pull? None. I've actually never been surprised on the first pull of an engine because the first pull on the engine is always very short. In fact, we do lots of stationary loads first to make sure that the tune is right. And the first pull is going to be a very, very short load and it's going to have no timing in it and it's going to be rich. And so we never do that. We sneak up on the power. The power thing doesn't happen until the end. What's the best valve clearance cam for 5.3 with a 799 head? I don't know what you mean by that. The 799 head's not going to change piston to valve clearance dramatically. So you guys did it. You guys did it with different rod lengths. Okay. Blue collar hot rods. What have you been beating your head against the wall? Yeah, I don't know why. It's did you check and see how much timing is in the thing? You recommend a BTR Truck Norris cam for my daily Suburban that I overlanded has 799 heads on it now. Would you switch heads? No, I wouldn't switch heads. Would you leave those heads on there? What heads and cam would you use for an LQ4 6-liter for towing? I would I would use a 706 head more than likely and go over all the things that we just went over in this discussion. And I don't know about the cam. I might look at the Truck Norris cam for that. Yeah, I'm not going to do cams and stuff in the Silverado. Although it would be cool. I don't know of any tuning for the Penstar. We got one more minute. Scott, you just picked up a non-scoop hood for your Impreza, for your front mount. That's a good idea. More aero, man. 24 degrees at the top would be okay. There probably should be more. I don't know what the middle part is, and I don't know what they're doing for, like I don't know what the detonation sensitivity is on that thing. How big of a cam can I run with 5.3 and 799 heads? Something near 231 degrees of duration. The tests that are coming up are the 2.2 turbo, hopefully, and some more testing. The Chupacabra versus the Truck Norris cam on the LS, at least. Nope, the Silverado has to stay together and run and go out and start every day and has to drive back and forth. It just went to, although not reliably, it had to go to Ohio. So having a stock one that's not modified is much better. And I get all of my cam wishes and blower wishes and turbo wishes and all the modification stuff. I get all of that done on the dyno. So I get to see all that stuff anyways. And on that note, it is time to go. Thank you guys all for showing up. I'll be back tonight, and I'm going to try to get a video out today besides that, but we'll see. The puppies are taking a lot of my time. Thank you guys all, and I will see you all tonight. See y'all. It's like I'm from Texas, huh?